When we first started podcasting many years ago, other podcasters who didn't have worksheets to sell suggested that those who use their podcasts to buy me a coffee.
Yeah, buy me a coffee. It was a way of generating a small income for their work, wasn't it?
And also advertisements on sites are also one way of making money. And there are a few websites that don't have Google ads or something similar on them.
Yeah, absolutely. But for this week's podcast on English.com business podcast, we're looking at an alternative way of making money, Patreon.
Okay, Jackie, so what is Patreon?
Well, it's an American membership platform. It's a way of helping creators and, artists earn a monthly income. It provides the tools to run a subscription payment service.
All right, okay. But how does it actually work then?
Well, content creators, those people who have a website or a blog, they set up a Patreon page, right? And this allows patrons to pay a fixed amount to the creator on a monthly basis.
Right, okay. So who are these patrons then?
Well, they're the people who want to support the creator and help to pay for their income.
Right, okay. Instead of buying them a coffee, you become a patron.
Yeah, and rather than buying the product, which they don't necessarily have, you're paying for their service. Okay, for example, Richard, there's a Spanish chef behind Spain on a Fork.
Ah, yes, okay.
Now, on his website, all the recipes are free to read, and all the instructional cooking videos that he produces are all free to watch.
Right, so just like many blogs on cooking.
Yeah, exactly. But the patrons want to support him to carry on producing his content, which is just fantastic.
And how much do they pay for this then?
Well, it depends. Every single creator chooses the amount. If we look at Spain on a Fork again, he has 4 levels, and you can choose to pay as little as €1 a month, subscription, remember?
Right.
Up to €22 a month.
Okay, and what do you get for that then, for the different amounts?
Well, it depends, but for all of them, you get extra content, extra recipes, extra instructional videos that other people won't see.
Right, and if you pay more, you presumably get to see more.
And also, he thanks you publicly, that you've paid to support him. Also, Richard, patrons can cancel at any time, so you can do a one-off payment if you want. But most people join for a year to support these people who are working at the end of the day.
Oh, okay, it sounds like a good idea. But of course, how much do the creators pay Patreon for this?
Well, it's not free, is it?
I can imagine.
They charge, Richard, anywhere between a commission 5 to 12%.
Wow, that's quite a lot, actually, isn't it?
Of their monthly income, yeah. And also, there are payment processing fees as well.
Of course.
I think one of the problems is, Richard, with the internet is that many people expect the content always to be free.
And there is a lot of stuff on the internet that is completely free.
Yeah, so good quality stuff, which takes a lot of time to prepare. And these videos, for example, very well done, very well presented. It's his job at the end of the day.
And you can choose whether you want to pay or not. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a way of supporting those who work online. And if you're just paying a few euros a month, well, that's keeping someone in employment.
Everybody's happy. For this week's podcast on English.com business podcast, we're looking at the wine industry.
Yeah, we're looking at 2 countries whose wine industries have faced 2 very different problems recently. Richard, we're starting with South Africa. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, they've been making wine for quite some time, since 1659. And they are the 8th largest wine producer, producing 3.3% of the world's wine.
Who do they export to?
Mainly to Europe. It's 13% to the UK, 11% to Germany, and 3% to France.
So they're doing quite well.
Well, as it happens, wine production in South Africa has actually been gradually falling. Now, it's mainly because of the drought that they've been having over the last few years.
Right, but for this podcast, we're talking about a specific problem they have now.
Yes, they have had a specific problem this year, is that they've got a surplus stock of about 300 million litres of wine, which is about 400 million bottles.
That's a lot.
It's about the total wine sales for them for 1 year.
So how has that happened?
I'll give you one guess. COVID. Now, South Africa has the most COVID-19 deaths of any African country, and the president, he decided to introduce some serious measures, and these included the total ban on alcohol sales in the country.
A complete total ban?
Yes, the president argued that it was necessary to reduce alcohol-related illnesses and injuries so that hospitals could instead focus just on COVID-19.
Right, okay. Now, what was the result of that?
Well, the domestic wine sales decreased by 20%.
Right.
And of course, exports declined as well because people in Europe were drinking less because of the pandemic.
Right.
And actually, in addition, some winemakers were unable to launch any new products. And the industry actually fears a loss of 27,000 jobs across the industry. That is 10% of the total workforce of 265,000.
Not looking good for South Africa then.
So what's your country then, Jackie?
Well, the second country produces a lot more than South Africa, between 3 to 4 billion bottles of wine.
That's got to be France, hasn't
Yeah.
it?
Now, but interestingly, Richard, over the last few years, the French wine industry too has seen a steady decline.
And why is that then?
A number of reasons. The US has imposed import taxes on French wine. The UK left, so Brexit also caused a problem. Sales to the UK dropped. And also, interestingly, competition with many new world wines.
Such as South Africa.
Well, exactly.
Yes, French wine's always more expensive, isn't it?
But there is now a specific problem. At least a third of French wine production, worth almost 2 billion euros, will be lost this year.
Wow. Is that COVID related?
Not because of COVID.
Why then?
The weather. Rare freezing temperatures have devastated many vines across the country. But it's not just the bitter frost and ice, which is the worst in decades, Richard. But the problem was it came after a bout of warm weather. So the vines started to develop earlier than usual.
And then they were killed off.
And then they were killed off by the frost, yeah. 80% of vineyards have been affected in France.
Wow, that's
a
a lot.
Yeah, and some areas have lost all of their crops, 100% of their crops, and they don't think they'll produce a single bottle. It's been devastating.
I'm sure.
Yeah. But, Richard, one wine country has done well. No US tariffs, no limits on drinking during COVID, and no bad weather.
Wow, where's that then?
Portugal.
I'll drink.
Since TV advertising began, there has always been food adverts aimed at children.
Yes, sweets, chocolate, ice cream.
But that may be about to change. So for this week's podcastandenglish.com business podcast, we're looking at the UK's radical plans for advertising of junk food for children. There's growing concern, isn't there, Richard, that children's health is being negatively affected by how food products are marketed to children.
Yes, in the UK, the government have estimated that children under the age of 16 are exposed to billions of food adverts online every year. But now the government's decided to do something about it. They plan to ban all junk food adverts on TV before 9 o'clock in the evening and a total ban online.
The total ban online, this is not just for children, is it?
No, because online advertisers aren't able to effectively identify which users are children and which are adults. So restricting all advertising is the best way to ensure that children aren't exposed to and harmed by highly influential but unhealthy food adverts.
Now, they say that if implemented, the ban would affect ads on Facebook, Google, social media activity. I mean, we're talking Twitter and Instagram. How on earth are they going to do that?
I have absolutely no idea.
What are they talking about? They're talking about products like burgers, meat pizzas, ice cream, chocolate, crisps. All of these products won't be able to be advertised online.
It may not come as a great surprise to you, but the number one advertising company in the UK is McDonald's.
Yeah.
And they spend over £85 million on advertising every year.
So why are they doing it, Richard? What's this big thing now?
Well, let's face facts. Britain is the second fattest European nation. And obesity is thought to be a factor that could have worsened the country's death toll during the pandemic.
Yeah. Research has shown that 1 in 3 children leaving primary school are overweight or obese. That's a third of 11-year-olds.
That's terrible, isn't it? And
Yeah.
obese children, I think they're 5 times more likely to remain obese into adulthood.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned how much McDonald's spends on their advertising, right? Now, compare that to the government's healthy eating campaign. What's the budget for that?
£5.2 million.
And then on top of that, the NHS spends an estimated £38 million a year on weight loss surgery.
Yes, but wait for it. It's a further £5.1 billion a year on treating obesity-related conditions, such as diabetes, which is really increasing.
I think the interesting thing, though, Richard, is why has Boris Johnson really taken these companies to task now?
Well, in 2020, a number of UK ministers got COVID, but only the Prime Minister. He was the only one who was seriously ill and needed to go into intensive care. He admitted himself he was too fat, and he thought his weight was a factor in why he became so ill.
So there we go, Richard. No more chocolate adverts on the telly.